So you've got your research question. You've decided on your research study, what you're actually going to be doing, your method. But I'm going to just interject here before we go any further because there's something that you need to think about. And that thing is expertise. Do you actually have the expertise to run the study you're thinking of running? Now, in most cases, this is going to apply specifically to intervention studies where you're going to do something with the participants. But it can apply to questionnaires or interviews if your questionnaire or interview is going to use a particular technique or measure that needs certain training or expertise. In most cases, though, it's probably going to be that you're thinking of doing some kind of intervention and you want to know what effect that has on your participants. So, a classic example that lots of students think about is mindfulness. You would like to do a mindfulness activity with your participants and then measure something. The problem is, unless you are a qualified mindfulness instructor, you're probably not going to be equipped to be able to deliver this intervention. Unless you are someone who has been trained in a specific technique, you're probably going to not be equipped to use that technique with your participants. If, for instance, you were thinking of doing a particular therapy and you have no training in that therapy, no, you can't just deliver it. You need to really examine what it is you're thinking of doing with your participants and consider whether you are appropriately trained to do so. For instance, art therapy is a legally protected title. You can't just run an art therapy session with participants if you're not trained to deliver art therapy. Likewise, if you're planning on doing anything that involves physiological aspects or health, so you can't do things that involve, I don't know, dietary restrictions or them eating certain foods. You obviously can't administer any drugs. You can't do exercises unless you know that you are qualified or you have somebody there who is a trained physiotherapist or trainer or someone who understands what the body can and can't do, particularly because you may have participants with undiagnosed physical disorders that might be harmful to them. I would even be cautious with things like asking people to sit in certain positions or lie in certain positions or stand in certain positions for long periods of time, because actually that can be harmful to some people. So think really carefully about what you're planning on doing with your participants and ask yourself, do I have the expertise to do this? Have I been trained to do this? This might require you to go and have a chat with your tutor and double check whether actually, yes, you are okay to do this or no, you're not. And if you're not, I'm afraid you're going to have to go back to reconsidering your method. Maybe you don't have to change the research question. Maybe you switch from an intervention to a systematic review because a systematic review doesn't involve any risk to participants. You don't need to have that same expertise, but you can still study the published research currently in the field. Or maybe you go all the way back to the start and you look at your research question again and think about whether it's really feasible for you to do that question. But expertise is an important thing to consider. Now, at this point, what you're going to start thinking is, but I could get somebody else to do this. So you might be thinking, well, I really want to know whether counselling in a university has a really good effect on students or whether it's actually not that useful. So my research question is, does counselling reduce stress in students? To be honest, that's probably already been answered in the field, but we're going with this as an example at the moment. So you then think, well, I can't deliver the counselling. I'm not qualified yet. I don't have, I'm not in a placement in a situation where I can deliver counselling to a load of students. It would be inappropriate. I don't have the expertise. But what I'll do is I'll get the counselling service at the university to deliver 6 sessions of counselling, and then I'll measure them before and after to see if it has an impact on the students. Is the counselling service really going to agree to that? First of all, are they going to agree to you getting access to their client data? And that's essentially what you're asking for. Okay, you say. So maybe we get them new clients and I'll get participants to come in specifically. Okay, so are they going to agree to doing 6 sessions? And how many are you talking here? Maybe 20 participants? That's a lot of hours that you're expecting these counsellors to work for free. Okay, you say, I won't get them to do that. What I'll get them to do instead is they can use their own participants, but they don't have to share much data with me. They just give me the one questionnaire that they do before and after, and it can be completely within their own sessions. And so it's their own clients. I'm not getting involved at all in any of that. They just give me their before and after measure. Okay. Let me ask you, if you were a counsellor, would you want somebody coming in and assessing how well you are doing your job, getting that data and potentially publishing it, and you would have no control over it, and there is no benefit to you at all? Now, of course, every counselling service gets audited, it gets quality controlled, it gets checked, and those processes are controlled and within the service or external to the service where it is appropriate to do so. But having some random student come in and assess whether they're doing a good job, what if you find that counselling has no benefit or worse, causes harm to the participants? Well, in that case, you're basically publishing something that says their service is not very good. Are they going to want to take that risk? You might be thinking from a, well, they should because this is appropriate and this is what research is all about. They're probably not going to. They're not going to volunteer themselves to potentially be open to harm without actually having any benefits whatsoever. Likewise, you might be thinking, well, okay, I will do mindfulness, but I'll get a trained mindfulness practitioner in to deliver the session. Okay, if you happen to know somebody who is willing to do that, brilliant. That's a fantastic thing. As long as they're willing to collaborate, that's great. In many cases, though, are they going to be willing to give up their time for free to come in and do sessions for you? And knowing that you're assessing before and after to see whether actually they're having any effect at all. So not only are they giving up their time for free, but you're now assessing whether they're doing a good job. And that's going to be published. Okay, it won't have their name on it, but it doesn't look good for them if you don't find that they are doing a good job. Now, again, you could say, well, they should be open to that kind of investigation. And sure, they should. But the reality is, not many of us are willing for some random stranger to come in and assess our performance and have that published and have no control over that at all. Most people would feel a little bit uncomfortable with that, especially when there's absolutely no benefit to them. So think really carefully. Do you have the expertise to do this? If you do not, think really carefully about whether you will be able to get anybody else to do it and be involved and collaborate in your study. Because if you can't, you're going to have to stop with that idea and think about some alternative way of either addressing your research question or changing your research question.